I think you're able to simplify things that are very complex in a really great way. So thank you.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff I was like, I always talk so
your
fast.
slides are also good. Your slides are quite good because they would bring us out to the big picture and then they would zoom in. So you always remembered where you were. So well done on that.
Thank you. Crazy. I put it on the group. It's fantastic. It's amazing. A discussion about transphobia and dating, right? Remember that? Obviously didn't get recorded. But I think what would be good to point out is how can we go about shifting and changing the ways that we navigate our day-to-day lives. So what can you do? And that sort of stuff.
What you said about ladies and gentlemen, I think someone brought this up when we were in high school. We went to a girls-only school and they said we shouldn't say ladies and gentlemen or ladies, good morning ladies or girls. So I know ever since that point, I always make it a thing to never have that greeting as like a gender term. Because so that's, I think, is a good place to start, that people don't acknowledge like the small thing that you could change that would make such a big impact on someone else that is listening to it.
Yeah. Oh, and also a point on pronouns as well is if you mistaken someone's pronoun, say sorry and do not go, oh, I'm so sorry. Wow, I've really messed up. I'm the worst person ever. What I've learned from that is you don't do that, because you know what happens? The other person have to say, oh, don't worry about it, or oh, relax, it's okay. And I think that's a really big problem, because it's not. You messed up, it was your fault. So I think that's also a really important point on pronouns that I didn't mention, but sorry.
Pronouns, I think also, just as Selena was saying, for me, it sometimes comes in the forms of like when I'm writing an email to someone that I'm not sure of. And I often see like templates or like standardized ways of saying, dear sir / madam, for example. And I was also like, brought to my attention that, okay, I don't have to actually say that. I can just say, dear like manager, or dear like someone else, like without actually assigning, or well, basically trying to be inclusive of everyone else. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
So the first scenario would be around babies and gender reveals. And the second situation I'd like to chat about is people like commenting on people. Like, I think the first place you can make a difference is to not comment when someone is changing or is dating a girl or is doing something else. Like, just accept it, move on. Don't like make it a thing that needs to be spoken about. Like, did you hear? And sorry, the third one was preferences in terms of like, I wouldn't date a trans person, or I wouldn't date a black dude, but that's just because that's my preference, and how problematic that is. And yeah, I'd just like to discuss those 3 ideas with everyone.
Awesome. I want to talk about gender reveals. I think I really hate how this has become a thing. Like, have you noticed the past couple of years, suddenly it's a thing? And it doesn't make any sense, because I just explained, right? Gender, you can't know someone's gender. You can't, you assign it based on sex, and that's so problematic. And so gender reveals are false, because you can't know your kid's gender. So to have a gender reveal, you can have a sex reveal, cool, great. Don't see why you would want to do that. But my point is that creates this issue, because then from the get-go, this kid hasn't even been born yet, and they're already being put into a category that they are forced into. And so that leaves a kid at risk, because they feel like they are wrong when they're not. And so yeah, that's all I have to say about gender reveals. You can't do it, you can't know it, so just please don't do it.
The way that I've had it put to me is people arguing about like, oh, how can your kid know that they're gay, but when they're 8, 9 years old? Well, then like, why is straight the default? Like, why is it okay that they know they're straight, but not that they know they're gay? And then sort of on this whole topic, because I think the at least in progressive circles, like I think the people in the group are, the argument of like gender reveals are kind of stupid and archaic is a given. I think a very interesting debate is around certain countries legalizing or not legalizing like hormone treatments for minors. So parents being able to opt for their kid to go on hormone treatment to medically switch sexes. Because I think that's quite a difficult topic.
Oh, I've got such a good one.
It's layered, so I'm interested to hear your opinion, yeah.
So what they do is the process is they put you on hormone blockers, right? Hormone blockers. So by the time you are a certain age, whatever age they may be, they stop you from going through puberty where you have a whole bunch of random hormones and also where you are more likely to develop things that you may not want to develop. And so you go on the blockers, you see how you feel, see how you react, how you interact. Do you have gender dysmorphia? Do you not have gender dysmorphia? What do you have body dysmorphia? Like what is going on with you? And the kid gets to do it. Your parents can't just go, I am, medically doing this to my kid. It's not a thing. It's not legally possible. So I think that's a really big problem is people think that it's just this thing that you do one day and you can't change. Hormones, there's no real big problem with being on hormones. There's no research saying that it negatively affects you, but despite what people may think. So I think that's a big problem is that people think that if my kid is going on hormone blockers and not going through puberty, it's going to stunt their growth, it's going to do all this sort of stuff. It really isn't. That's not what medical professionals say. And so that's why they suggest doing it, because then at least your kid has some time to be like, breathe, let me explore this, let me see how I go. Hope that makes sense.
I won't lie, I quite struggle with that idea. Like with not hormone blockers, but like with kids and like taking hormones and stuff. I can understand that from a young age, that this isn't the body you want to be in. But I struggle so much with that because, I know as a kid, being someone who was dyslexic, I was put on like Ritalin and all that sort of stuff quite young. And there's like times where I feel like I didn't know myself properly. And there's a lot of like, you know what I mean? Like it's difficult to like get that right, because looking back now, I think there's times where it completely changed my personality and made me a lot quieter than I am. But at the time I thought it was great. Like I was finally, on the reading train, everything was going great. So it's so difficult because, maybe they'll look back and be like, it affected me in this way. But I guess there's never going to be a right answer. I think it's very personal. Like it's going to have to be what that individual wants to do with their life.
Mm. And you can't make the comparison between the Ritalin versus hormones because of the side effects. And so I think that's a lot of things that people misunderstand is hormones isn't going to change your personality. You're not going to suddenly become some things are going to change, especially if you take hormones different times. Oh, bye, Fee. If you take hormones at a different time, you may go through like second puberty. So it depends. You may like break out in spots. Find small changes, but think about how your puberty was, right? You may have been a little bit something, but I think your personality is always going to change.
Hormones don't really change your personality. Are we then wrong to say that like when like pregnant women act overly dramatic, or like when women are in ovulation and they're super sensitive, is it then wrong to say, oh no, my hormones are acting up or they're all over the place? Because I would think
Of
that
course it's not.
hormones can sort of drive your personality and make certain things a lot more extreme than they would be in your natural state.
But it's you see that's what I'm saying, is that you're understanding that this is an imbalance. This is a problem. It's just clearly because of certain factors. But I think the issue comes about it doesn't change you at your core. You're gonna eat something funny, you're gonna do something, I think that's the issue, that it's not going to like get inside of you and go so same thing with pregnancy. Obviously it affects people differently. So as Carmen said, I think it's good to say, it's kind of individualized as well.
Is it wrong? And like, let's discuss to say like, I'm not attracted to this person because they're transgender or because they're pansexual or because of whatever race they are, and blame it on I have a type, and how our types are influenced by social constructs in movies. So I mean, I've always thought I have a type, as in like dark hair, like I don't know, rugby player looking ish white dude. And I guess if you look at every romantic movie that's ever been played, who's it? Like this dark, handsome white dude, right?
Zac Efron.
Yeah, like you see, so it's so difficult because I think people need to go and properly reflect. Is what they say is attractive because they actually attractive? I mean, attracted to that, or is it because they've been forced to believe that this is like the Hollywood pretty boy? And I think it's important for people to just accept that you can fall in love with people or be attracted to people not because of certain things. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I think it's all a spectrum. Like, you can love someone's personality, or you could love the way someone looks, and I think it's just going to be up to you to decide where that fits in. But I think it's wrong to come out and say, I'm not going to date a black dude. It's so wrong. Or I'm not going to date someone who's transgender.
I think just to add to that, it definitely is influenced by like social constructs, like you said, but attraction is largely formed in childhood, like really young, like between the ages like 1 to 6, kind of young, like even maybe before you started, watching those movies and stuff. So it has a lot to do with your parents and your family members, like the people who looked after you when you were younger, what you saw in other people as well, like the way you've seen people interact with each other, how they've started, like, what the idea of love to you is essentially formed by your caregivers. So I think when you said reflection, that's really important. But I mean, reflect like way back. Just try to look back as far as you can to like, the environment that you grew up in, the relationship your parents have with each other, the relationship you have with your parents. That all deeply is embedded into your subconscious, and that kind of forms your sort of modern day attraction. Like that's where I think attraction is really formed from. So it is also definitely influenced, by social constructs and movies and things. But this is my personal view, is that if you want to dive deep into the psychology and I don't know, I guess maybe the physiology of attraction, go back to childhood. That's where, yeah.
I also think I've read some interesting things where you're attracted to someone who has an opposite, immune system to you. I've also read things like that. So there's a lot going on there, but I think starting off the bat, deciding certain things is problematic, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's a problem with having a type that you're attracted to, because that just happens. Like you can't out deny it because you have a type. But I think it's important that you investigate why you have such a liking towards those type of people. And then if that's problematic, then maybe you can actively like change it and all of that. For dark, and people used to say a lot of mean things, and then I'm not that dark, so it was like, what happened to you type of thing. So he grew up saying he would never, ever, ever date a dark woman. And I mean, it was so sad to see it, because for the longest time he used to date really light girls. And his reason was that he doesn't want his kids to go through the same thing. So it wasn't even a matter of, no, I really like her. It was more of like, okay, she's light and I like her, so let's go. So I do think that is really problematic. But with what Abdullah said, that is true, because I know my dad is darker than my mom, so I'm always like, oh my gosh, my husband has to be darker than me. Like, I don't want my husband to be lighter than me. But I am definitely attracted to a light-skinned man, so I don't know what I'm gonna do, you know. I once even told my boyfriend to stand in the sun like 2 months before we get married so that he's darker in the pictures. But I definitely do like him just the way he is. So yeah, your childhood does play a role in it. But I mean, at the end of the day, you like what you like. And also, you don't always date your type. I have never ever dated my type. I think this is my first time I'm dating my type, and that's why I'm enjoying it. But yeah, you don't always date your type. You can like people and still not date them. So it's not a bad thing, but it is bad to full out say, I will not date a black man or a white man, and all of that. And also, God works in mysterious ways, or the universe works in mysterious ways, and usually you do end up with what you said, I would never ever. Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love that, because that's where we always get up, is that we go, everyone gets defensive. They're like, okay, but so you tell me I can't date, you know, like whoever I'm attracted to. I'm like, no, that's fine. You can do that. But you need to make sure you know that. First of all, you're not fetishizing this person. Had a lot of for that. But, you know, you're not fetishizing the person. You're not, because trust me, hey, I can tell you from your brother's girlfriend's perspective, it's not fun when you know the only reason why they're dating you is because you're light. We know for the most part you can feel it, because they always talk about the babies, you know, like, it'll be so nice, our kids are gonna be so cute, and I'm like, no thanks. Moving on from that. But I think what's a really important point is to think about, as you said, is the reason why I like this person problematic? I think that's the easiest way to do it. So for instance, for me, I know that I think I work better with someone who's quieter. My current partner is very quiet. It works out well because I talk a lot. And that's just a preference I have. Does not mean that I've decided, you know, that, that's the only person I'm going to go to. It just happens, right? And if I interrogate it now, it's not so problematic, because as long as I let him talk, it's fine. You know? So I think that's the thing, is that you interrogate yourself and you say, okay, what am I doing here that is a problem in terms of attraction and that sort of stuff? So I like that point about you going on a tangent again.
Can I ask something, guys? Do you guys think people are able to fully flat out say they're heterosexual and that's it, if they've never ever experienced something outside of the norm? Like, is it possible to say, I'm 100% heterosexual, even though you've never ever ever deviated? And I use that loosely.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's possible, because then you saying what you're attracted to based on like one specific aspect of them, right? Which I think is the same thing you do, like people do with race, saying like, I only date people that blonde hair, blue eyes, and then you just taking out a whole part of the population because they didn't fit these things, right? So I mean, there's so much there's so much more that makes a person, that if you take it down to like I guess gender is am I right using that correctly, Naledi?
Mm-hmm.
Like saying, like, if you take it down to gender and then disqualify people based on gender or their gender expression, and then you once again like just say, no, I don't like these type of people and saying all these type of people are the same. When
Yeah, I think that brilliant. Yeah, not to be like. I think that's great. I think that's really great. And also, I think the problem is that heterosexuality is the norm. So it's easy just to be like, well, live your life. Because that's just what you're taught. As I said, for me, it was really hard to figure out that I was attracted to more genders than just men, because I was attracted to men. And so I could just be like, oh, I'm fine. I'm dating people, dating only men. But that's just how society has taught me. And it took me a long time to realize that that's just not all that I'm attracted to and all the people that I'm attracted to. And I think that's important to figure out, is that if you just get complacent, I'm sure there are a lot of people who never got to the stage that I got to. And so, I think that's an important part as well. So. Yeah.
Hi. Can I just say one thing on that, Coms, before you ask your question statement? I think it's when you on like the that I really love that diagram that you showed with the different lines and the privilege and the people below, because it shows like when you ever on the privilege side, you have the luxury of not having to interrogate these things. So when you assume that you're heterosexual, you never had to interrogate it, right? When you're white, you never had to interrogate racism. When you're male, you never had to interrogate sexism. So I think that's why these things, people see them almost as like the default or as a binary, because most of the power lies with the people that are obviously on top of those things. So those conversations aren't conversations that happen usually. That's why like people would have to start discovering things by themselves or go through a hard time discovering these things, because it's almost taboo or not discussed, I think, in the general world. Yeah. Cool.
To add to that privilege line, I think it is really important to also like realize that you're never necessarily gonna, for certain people, it's not necessarily gonna be always unprivileged or always unoppressed. It's like somewhere there's both sides that you experience. And I think that also kind of ties into the whole binary thing, where it's like you're either privileged or you're not privileged. But it's actually, like you said, it's very intersectional. Like you are privileged in certain parts of your character and you are oppressed in other aspects of your character. And it's quite important to actually understand where it is that your privilege lies, so that like Sunena was saying, you could actually, have those conversations and actually interrogate those privileges. And then it's also important to realize, okay, this is where I'm not necessarily privileged. And then also sort of, engage in conversations of that sort. But yeah, on to you, Carmen.
Or not a statement, but like a chat Naledi has like drawn my attention to, is to understand that things are different for everyone. So being gay as a white man is different to being gay as a Black man, and being, let's say, bisexual as a white female, and being, you know what I mean? Like, you've got to understand that everything is different. And I think that's where intersectionality, you need to assess all those things, is you can't just be like, okay, cool, they're in this sort of environment, I'm going to treat them like this. Like, you need to understand, well, they've also got racism on top of that, and they've got this layer and that layer. There's a lot of things to unpack before deciding something about someone or accepting certain things about them. And then the second one that I recently saw was we need to stop asking people like, how bi are they, or are they bi, or are they gay, or you know what I mean? Like, you like are fully bisexual or you're fully gay. Like, people are like, you think they're in between or they're still figuring out which side they're on. Like, I think we need to accept that is just it. You know what I mean? Let's chat about that.
Yeah, because categories are awful. We always obsessed with categories, and I think if someone finds a category that they like, that they're comfortable with, fantastic. Especially if they're a marginalized person. I think to now police where you fit in. Hey, no, you can't say that. Well, obviously it depended, but it's like, you can't say that, you have done X, Y, Z. right? You can't do this, you can't do that. And I think that's a really big problem. And I find it a lot within the lesbian community, more specifically TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists. What they do is they say, okay, well, if you're dating someone who's a transgender woman, you can't call yourself lesbian because of all these crazy different factors. And I think that's when this obsession with sex is where we get caught up when it comes to coming in with sexuality, is that we are obsessed with this is who you're attracted to based on this sex. And so if you deviate, if you go somewhere else, you can't fall into that category anymore. You aren't 100%, as you said, you're 100% lesbian, you're 100% this, you're 100% that. And I think that's why I like the term queer, because it's really spectrum based and really, open. And you can't be like, oh, what queerness are you? You can just be like, sorry, 100% queer, thanks. Keep it moving.
And like Lisa just said, like especially men, like they're trying to like erase bisexualness because it's like they turned them to come back or something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's a big thing is that a lot of women talk about how they won't date men who've been with other men or are attracted to other men, and all their reasoning is so flawed. And it's kind of, it's crazy because then they say, because there's this idea in society that if you as a man have, are attracted to another man, you are automatically gay. That's it. That's all you can be. And that's hectic. That's so hectic because then people are like, oh, well, he can't actually be attracted to me. Therefore, I'm going to feel, it's just, it's a big problem, actually, definitely. I think that's a good point.
I think categories allow people minds to be more at ease because they can understand it more. Mm-hmm. And I think we've constantly got to challenge that human nature almost to want to categorize to understand.
Yeah. No. It's just, I think it's a hard thing to navigate and a hard thing to kind of go in with you. But I think what starts is to be less judgmental. Because if you are constantly, as soon as you meet them, trying to say, oh, are you, what's your gender? Or like, what's their sexuality? Or what is, trying to make these rash judgments and assumptions. I think that is the biggest problem that we have, is that then you've had this assumption in your brain. And then if suddenly they are, kissing someone that you didn't think they would be, you break that assumption within your brain. You go, what? No, they can't. Oh. Instead, if you had no assumptions and no judgments, I mean, of course it's going to come up and maybe just interrogate that and say no. It's going to be a lot easier for you to be more understanding of people.